The House will come to order. Without objection, we'll revert to reports of standing committees and divisions. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there's no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. The member from Hennepin, Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, we will have a quick recess so that the Rules Committee can meet briefly and then come back up here. So, Mr. Speaker, I move a recess to the call of the chair for approximately 5 minutes, and the members of the Rules Committee, we will meet in room 120 of the Capitol.
Representative Pepin moves a recess to the call of the chair for approximately 2.5 minutes. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails, and the House stands in recess to the call of the chair. The House will come to order. Announcements by the Speaker.
Announced by the Speaker, a message from the Senate has been received requesting concurrence by the House to amendments adopted by the Senate to the following House File number 985.
Conference Committee reports on House files.
Conference Committee report, this is the Smith motion. Conference Committee report on House File number 3, an act relating to transportation. The report is addressed to the Honorable Kurt L. Doudt, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Michelle L. Fischbach, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 3, report that we have agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The Conference Committee report is signed by all 3 conferees on behalf of the House and all 3 conferees on the part of the Senate. Smith moved that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 3 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the bill author, the member from Hennepin, Representative Smith, to explain the report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. House File 3, Real ID. This bill has come back from a conference committee a better bill than it left. There was much discussion the last time this bill was on the floor. This bill has come back with enhanced driver's license for all locations. This bill came back with rulemaking being silent. And this bill is fiscally sound. This bill will allow the state of Minnesota to be compliant with the federal requirements for the Real ID Act from 2005. This bill allows Minnesotans to fly come January of 2018 with their regular license for ultimate implementation of October 2020. I ask for your support.
Any discussion on the Conference Committee report? The member from Winona, Representative Pulowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to encourage a vote of green on this Conference Committee report, and I want to congratulate Representative Smith. This is my second year working with Representative Smith on Real ID. When this Conference Committee met, and I know this is a little strange for recent events, there were actual proposals made by either the House or Senate. When we had our final meeting, there was a detailed series of proposals that were handwritten and understood by both the House and Senate. And I also appreciated Representative Smith making sure all the members of the Conference Committee were kept informed of where we were in the process. So I encourage members vote for the Conference Committee report.
Any further discussion on the Conference Committee report? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the Conference Committee report on House File 3 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
House File number 3, third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Any further discussion? The member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I just want to express my appreciation. This bill's been a long haul. I think I've grabbed Representative Smith and Speaker Doudt about 400 times in the hallway and holding up my ID. And I think Minnesota's ready. I'm a little disappointed it's taken us this long, but I'm glad it's here, and hopefully we can get it to the governor and get it signed. Many people want to travel. We were lucky in this state to have a lot of folks that fly around and use it for business or personal. And I'm selfish, I hear a lot from these teachers that talk about education, but I happen to throw luggage when we're not here, so I'm hoping that we can get done here and I can get back. And even the speaker's been out there helping throw some luggage at the airport and see how that works. But there's a lot of folks that want to fly around and get onto bases and other places. So thank you for resolving this. And it is going to be a much better day in Minnesota, and I'm glad that we can go forward. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 120 ayes and 11 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference and its title agreed to. Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1227. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 1227, number 2 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to taxation, the first engrossment.
Recognize the member from Fillmore, Representative Davids, to introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 1227 is the Department of Revenue's 2017 policy bill. Carrying it for the department, I appreciate your support.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Frankie moves to amend House File number 1227, the first engrossment, and the amendment is coded A1.
I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Frankie, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Amendment A1 is just adding some language for a city of mine, South St. Paul, adding on some TIF district fixes that did not make it out of conference committee, so I am hoping to get this legislation moved forward for my city. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I appreciate your support.
Any discussion on the A1 amendment? The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd encourage a yes vote for the amendment.
Any further discussion on the A1 amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the A1 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. The clerk will give the bill its, there are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 1227, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion on House File 1227 as amended. Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 133 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 575. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 575, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to capital investment.
I recognize the bill author, the member from Meeker, Representative Urdahl, to introduce the bill, and maybe you want to explain the Norwegian flag as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And this is Sitten de Mai, Norwegian Constitution Day, and I'm just as excited as an old Norwegian can get. So let's move on from here. Mr. Speaker, I do have an amendment. Should I do that first?
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Urdahl moves to amend House File Number 575, and the amendment is coded A17-0466.
Recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Urdahl, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this basically puts the bill in the order that I would like it. We are taking the famous Lanesboro Dam and replacing it with a somewhat larger bonding bill.
Discussion on the Urdahl A17 amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the A17 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. Oh, wait a
Are those in? Yep. Those,
We didn't do the amendments. No, passed, but we need to reconsider the amendment because we didn't do the amendments. It was my bad.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Urdahl.
I move to reconsider. Apparently, we have to take up the amendment to the amendment first.
I appreciate your motion to reconsider. That was my fault, members. We did have amendments to the amendments here at the desk, and I moved too quickly. So my apologies. Representative Urdahl moves to reconsider the motion to adopt the A17 amendments. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion to reconsider signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. We are now back on the A17 amendment, and there is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Frankie moves to amend House File Number 575 as amended as follows, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A17-0470.
Recognize the member from Washington, Representative Frankie, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment to the amendment inserts language for a grant for the City of South St. Paul. It is the City of South St. Paul Day over here in 54A. This language would help a lake that we have that borders 3 cities in our area. It would also help an area that Representative Bar R represents, Representative Rick Hansen. Unfortunately, I was unable to get this heard in committee this year, so with the chair's commitment to work on with me moving forward, at this time I'd like to withdraw this amendment, Mr. Chair.
Discussion on the Frankie amendment. Oh, I apologize. Representative Frankie withdraws his amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Urdahl moves to amend House File Number 575, and the amendment is coded A4.
Recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Urdahl, to introduce your amendment.
This is the A4 amendment?
You are correct.
Well, I will move the amendment and appreciate the support.
Any discussion on the A4 amendment? The member from Ramsey, Representative Hausman.
Mr. Speaker, if the author would yield, is this simply a technical amendment, a number that was wrong on a line?
He will yield. The member from Meeker, Representative Urdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Hausman, yes. It's a small technical amendment that fixes a drafting error related to the total appropriation amount under deed.
Any further discussion on the Urdahl amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the Urdahl amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. The amendment to the amendment is adopted. There is one final amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Garofalo moves to amend The Urdahl amendment to House File number 575, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A7.
Mr. Speaker. I recognize the member from Sherburne, Representative Knobloch, to, I presume, introduce the Garofalo amendment.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I can speak to the A7 Garofalo amendment. This was an amendment that we did hear in Ways and Means yesterday. It was adopted by the committee. It's already been, I think, something that was also heard in other committees. It sets aside money for the city of Thief River Falls for a major electronics wholesaler up their expansion, DigiKey, and I would appreciate people supporting the amendment.
Any discussion on the A7 Garofalo amendment? The member from Ramsey, Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand that Representative Garofalo is not here, but in his jobs bill, he has another $1.6 million out of the BDPI. And I'm wondering if anyone would know if that's coming out of the jobs bill and we're doing, or are we doing $3.2 million for a BDPI?
Representative Garofalo will yield. Representative Garofalo.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Mahoney, my apologies. I was just finishing up another meeting. I believe I heard your question. If I answered the wrong one, please let me know. Take that flag down. So Representative Mahoney, what we're doing is we're leaving, in the current conference report, we're leaving the general fund appropriation for BDPI the same. We're simply taking the set aside for this project and moving it to the bonding bill. There is no increase nor reduction in the BDPI appropriation in either the bonding bill nor the jobs omnibus bill. We're simply taking this set aside and moving it to the bonding bill.
Any further discussion on the Garofalo amendment? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the Garofalo amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The motion prevails and the Garofalo amendment is adopted. We are now on, members, the members, we're now back on the A17 Urdahl DE amendment as amended. Discussion on the DE amendment as amended. The amendment coded A17. The member from Meeker, Representative Urdahl.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, this is the one that we just did and gets the bill in the order that I would like it for the discussion this afternoon.
Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of adoption of the A17 amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 575, as amended.
Third reading.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And what I will do is run through the bill a little bit. This is an $800 million capital investment bill. $800 million is a good amount of money. And I would like to run through some of the highlights. I'm not going to go through the whole spreadsheet with you, but I will highlight some areas. But first of all, let me remind us all that this is not technically a bonding year, but this is a year where we are making up for a bill that we kind of did last year, but not quite. Now, it is basically based on last year's bill. Almost everything, almost all the money and projects in this bill are from last year, except for a few that we have cited as emergency projects, because this, technically not being the bonding year, has always been the emergency bonding year. And there are projects that are important and I think fit into that category. There's the Billsby Dam, the Truss Bridge on the Minneapolis Veterans Home. We have the waste pit in Andover, and the Hanson Exchange, I believe it is, in Representative Hortman's district on the railroad separation there, I think it is. So we do have some things that we considered to be emergencies and needed to be dealt with as part of this bill. But most of it, as I said, is what was here before. We don't have any cash in the bill at this point, but it's very heavy on infrastructure. And let me again go through some of the highlights. In flood mitigation, we have $11,555,000. Dam repair, reconstruction, removal, $15 million. The St. Louis River area of concern, $25.4 million. We've done quite a bit addressing railroad grade separations. Moorhead, $42,262,000. Anoka County, the Hanson Boulevard that I mentioned before, $12,600,000. The City of Red Wing, Sturgeon Lake Road grant to political subdivision, $14,762,000. Local roads and bridges, local bridge replacement, $59 million. Local road, $104,691,000. Total GO under this section, $248,717,000. Department of Human Services, we have addressed the needs at the Security Hospital in St. Peter to a tune of $70,255,000. City of St. Paul, the Dorothy Day Phase 2 housing, $12 million. And as I mentioned before, the Minneapolis Veterans Home Trust Bridge Project, $7,851,000. We have also, under public facilities, have a total of $114,963,000. These very important projects for water infrastructure, wastewater, drinking water infrastructure. And FHA, MHFA, the nonprofit housing infrastructure appropriation bonds, $35 million to address some of our housing needs in the state. So these are just, again, some of the highlights. And again, is everything that everyone wants in this bill? Not at this time, but this addresses an awful lot of important needs for the state of Minnesota that are important to deal with now. I have some more comments, I suppose, later, but if you have some discussion, I think I'm ready for your questions.
Discussion on House File 575 as amended. The member from Ramsey, Representative Hausman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. We have not yet included all that was in last year's bill, and so the backlog is growing. This particular bill has seen more versions than any I can recall. We have one spreadsheet that shows sort of, I think, 10 or 12 versions. This version came together in Ways and Means. There were some good additions, but it needs a bit more work, particularly in a couple of areas. In higher education, which is usually a third of the bill, we're just about at 10 or 11%, and so much of the state is waiting for those projects. With CREP, where I think we have a 3-to-1 match, we are underfunding that. We have a few projects, very important projects, that require general fund money, which I believe will be there at the end of the day, and those we don't want to lose sight of. One of those has been waiting for 5 years. It's not yet regionally balanced, but we're very close. For a product that will serve the state of Minnesota well, We believe we should save our time and energy to work together, House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, the governor's office, to get that final product ready, to use these hours, get the final product ready so that we don't run out of time at the end. For today, we will vote no and look forward to further work to have a wonderful package at the end of the day that's good for the state of Minnesota.
Further discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Uglum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members. I rise in support of this bill. This is a bill that we've spent an awful lot of time on, and we all know that there are many unmet needs here in the state of Minnesota for our infrastructure and our traditional bonding projects. During the last bonding tour, which was run by Chair Torkelson, I believe, all of us got on the bus and went all over the state and examined all of these projects. And for anybody that went on that tour, it was a tremendous eye-opening experience because there are so many unmet needs around the state that we have to deal with. And this bill does that. This bill shows that we have looked at asset preservation for our universities, and yes, could we use more? Probably. Safety and protection in our prisons, which we need to deal with, we have to deal with, and it's in the bill. Dam repair and reconstruction, not a pretty thing when our dams are about ready to fall apart and create havoc in our waterways. And speaking of water, there's clean water projects in here, which is always near and dear to our hearts, very important. Rail safety, we all know what's going on with oil trains and the problems that we have, not only in Moorhead, not only in Coon Rapids, but all over the state. And this bill makes a great start towards developing more projects for rail safety, and I know that Representative Hornstein does agree with that. So, and then we also do have some money in here for regional parks and other very, very worthy projects. I'd like you to all consider that we are falling behind in our infrastructure here in Minnesota. We failed to, well, this body did pass a bonding bill last time around, and we all know what happened. And so we need to do this, and we need to do this and place the highest consideration. We have many important bills that we're considering, but this has to be one of the highest and most important bills that we're going to deal with this session because we failed one way or another doing this last time around. And we need to get our work done for the state of Minnesota. We need to move forward. We need to help people, and that's what this bill does. So I ask for your support.
Further discussion? The clerk, or the gentleman from Meeker, Chairman Urdahl.
I'm sorry. I just have to make a few comments here. Okay, why do we bond? To meet our responsibility to address the infrastructure needs of our state. And this bill primarily addresses those needs. It's $800 million. I've tried to address the needs across the state in a bipartisan manner. There's more than we could do in terms of our balance, but that'll be worked on, I think. Without bonding assistance, I fear for skyrocketing property taxes and doomed communities, particularly in rural Minnesota. Much of our infrastructure in this state is beginning to crumble. Most of our small towns in greater Minnesota have water pipes installed in the 1930s. They need replacement. In my district, Cosmos got a new water tower. They turned on the power for the water. It went into the water main under Highway 4 and broke it in 18 places. And that's the type of thing that's happening all over our state in small towns. Bonding helps to take care of the need for pipes, wastewater treatment plants, and water towers. There's $248 million for local roads and bridges and railroad crossings, and maybe enough to do larger bridges in the Twin Cities. Needs are becoming critical, and we've added metro projects to deal with that. Now, some of you may not plan on voting for this bill because it doesn't do enough for them or for the state. Let me say that we support bonding because it's good for Minnesota. Even if a local legislative district is not affected, we need to support it because we are state representatives, and our first obligation is to do what is right for the state. I know that Representative Hausman shares that opinion. Therefore, as I look at my bill, it is a little bit disconcerting to me to realize that there are members here who are prepared to vote against projects that are vital to their districts. I implore you, consider what you're doing and why. We can't say that we voted no on local projects because $800 million isn't enough money. I am concerned about some that might vote no on tens of millions for our districts. We have water sources in need of purification. We have several railroad grade separations vital to public safety. We have toxic waste in landfills. We must stand up and address these and other needs. So, let's get down to nuts and bolts here. I'd like to get this bill to conference committee. Think about it. Those of you who supported the bill that nearly passed at the end of last session, we now have an $800 million bill. The other two bills that are out there, one the governor, one the Senate, are each about $1 billion. Do you really think that if we send them a bill, it'll come back smaller? Do you really think that projects important to you can't be added? And I say don't assume that we'll all get another chance to do this if it goes down. I hope that there's another path, but I can't guarantee that. I actually don't run the place. This may be your only chance to vote to put $800 million on the table for bonding projects. Do what is right for the people of Minnesota. In a perfect world, maybe we wouldn't have the extreme extraneous pressures put on us. Maybe we'd just be sitting here trying to do what the people of Minnesota sent us here to do. And one of these things is a bonding bill. Please vote green and don't allow bonding to be put off for another year.
Discussion. The clerk will take the roll on the bill as amended. Members, please vote. Members, please vote. Clerk will close the roll. There being 70 ayes and 62 nays, the bill does not pass as amended. Reports from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Pepin from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designate the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Friday, May 19, 2017, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. Senate file numbers 359 and 1564.
We will now revert to messages from the Senate. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. This is the Vogel motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 740, an act relating to commerce. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Vogel moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 740, that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 5 members of the House, and that the House requests that a like committee be appointed by the Senate to confer on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses.
The gentleman from Scott, Representative Vogel.
Mr. Speaker, that is my motion.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails.
Message from the Senate. This is the Lunan motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 1443, an act relating to commerce. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Lunan moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 1443, that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 3 members of the House, and that the House requests that a like committee be appointed by the Senate to confer on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses.
The gentleman from Olmsted, Representative Pearson.
Yes, Representative Lunan just stepped out, but that is his motion, or that'll be my motion.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails.
Message from the Senate, and this is the Anderson P. motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendments to concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House file number 1717, an act relating to agriculture. The message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Anderson P. moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments to House File Number 1717, that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 3 members of the House, and that the House requests that a like committee be appointed by the Senate to confer on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses.
The gentleman from Pope, Chairman Anderson.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. That's my motion. The Ag Policy Bill needs some conference work, and that's my motion.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails.
Message from the Senate. This is the Nornis motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the Senate refuses to concur in the House amendments to the following Senate file. Senate file number 943, an act relating to higher education. The Senate respectfully requests that a conference committee be appointed thereon. The Senate has appointed as such committee Senators Fischbach, Draheim, Anderson P., Jensen, and Clausen, and the message is signed Cal R. Ludeman, Secretary of the Senate. Nornis moves that the House accede to the request of the Senate and that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 5 members of the House to meet with a like committee appointed by the Senate on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses on Senate File number 943.
The gentleman from Otter Tail, Chairman Nornis.
Mr. Speaker, that is my motion, and we need to go to conference.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails.
Message from the Senate. This is the Garofalo motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the Senate refuses to concur in the House amendments to the following Senate file. Senate file number 1456, an act relating to economic development. The Senate has respectfully requested a conference committee be appointed therein. The Senate has appointed as such committee Senators Miller, Dames, Osmic, Anderson P., and Champion. Garofalo moves that the House accede to the request of the Senate and that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 5 members of the House to meet with a like committee appointed by the Senate on the disagreeing votes of the 2 houses on Senate file number 1456.
The gentleman from Dakota, Chairman Garofalo.
Mr. Speaker, that is my motion.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. Announcements by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File number 740. Vogel, Hoppe, Lunan, Kresha, and Halverson. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on Senate File number 799. Dean M., Schumacher, Albright, Keel, and Schultz. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on Senate File number 844. Fabian, Uglum, Heinzeman, Swazinski, and Eklund. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File number 1443. Lunan, Haley, and Hillstrom. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File number 1545. Hamilton, Anderson P., Backer, Lewick, and Poppy. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File number 1717. Anderson P., Hamilton, and Johnson C. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on Senate File number 943. Nornis, Christensen, Whalen, Daniels, and Omar. Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on Senate File number 1456. Garofalo, Newberger, O'Neill, Hoppe, and Mahoney.
Reports of standing committees and divisions. We will revert to reports of standing committees and divisions. Yep. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk. Reports of standing committees and divisions. A copy of this order of business has been placed on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the reports will be adopted. Hearing no objection, the reports are adopted. Second reading of House bills.
Second reading, House File number 739.
Second reading. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on the motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail. Announcements. Announcements. The gentleman from Morrison, Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, my words fly up, my thoughts remain below. And with that, I move that the House adjourn today and it adjourns until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, May 18th.
Representative Kresha moves that when the House adjourned, it adjourned until 10 a.m. Thursday, May 18th, 20 and 17. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Representative Kresha.
I move now that the House adjourn.
Representative Kresha moves that the House do now adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The motion prevails and the House stands in adjournment until 10 a.m. Thursday, May 18th, 20 and 17.